TSMC is no ordinary company, and this is no ordinary story. It became one of the most important businesses on Earth by making the brains inside other people's machines and refusing to build a brand of its own. By 1985, Taiwan needed a future beyond contract manufacturing, and Morris Chang needed a second act after being passed over in America. He was 54, a veteran of Texas Instruments, and old enough to know that in semiconductors, being late can look exactly like being finished. Semiconductors are tiny switches that store and move information, and by the 1980s, they were becoming the nervous system of modern industry. Taiwan made plenty of electronics, but the richest layer of the business still sat overseas, in the brains inside the machines. The island's leaders wanted that layer badly, because technology meant jobs, exports, and a little more room in a dangerous neighborhood. So they asked Chang to run ITRI, the Industrial Technology Research Institute, a state-backed lab built to pull Taiwan up the value chain. Chang arrived in Hsinchu with an outsider's resume and an outsider's wound. He had spent decades mastering an industry that never gave him the top seat. In America, chip companies usually worked as integrated manufacturers, businesses that designed their own chips, built them, and sold them under their own names. That model gave companies control, but it also locked them into giant costs, giant egos, and the belief that factories should serve only one house. Chang looked at that orthodoxy and saw something else: expensive plants sitting underused while brilliant designers struggled to afford production. The sound inside a wafer fab never leaves you. Filtered air hissing through sealed rooms where one speck of dust can ruin a chip. What if a company built the factories, took orders from anyone, and promised never to compete with its own customers?
It sounded almost unnatural, because in semiconductors, the factory was the crown jewel, not a service business.
But Chang was about to ask Taiwan to fund exactly that heresy. In 1987, the stakes were simple. If the new company failed, Taiwan would waste years, and Chang would end his career on a public gamble. The company was called Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, and its mission fit in one radical sentence. TSMC would manufacture chips for other companies, design none of its own, and live or die on trust. That model is called a foundry, the industrial cousin of a custom print shop, except the pages are silicon wafers worth fortunes. Taiwan backed the venture, and Dutch electronics group Philips joined as an early partner, giving the project industrial credibility. On paper, the logic was clean. In practice, Chang was asking customers to hand over their most valuable blueprints to a stranger in Taiwan. For chip designers, that blueprint is everything. Years of research, millions of dollars, and the fear that a factory might copy your work. So TSMC built its first business on a promise that sounded boring and turned out to be revolutionary. It would never become your rival. TSMC would launch no branded processors. It would build no competing product lines. It would remove the temptation to favor an in-house design, because there would be no in-house design. Inside the clean rooms, workers in white suits looked like astronauts under yellow light, moving through a business few consumers would ever see. Now came the hard part, filling those rooms with enough orders to justify the gamble. In the early 1990s, TSMC faced a brutal chicken and egg problem. Big customers wanted proof of scale, but scale required big customers. The answer came from smaller design firms that had ideas, engineering talent, and almost no hope of affording their own fab. Those companies became known as Fabless, firms that designed chips but outsource manufacturing to someone else. Fabless sounds like a missing piece. For Chang, it was the whole point. If TSMC could become the trusted factory for hundreds of designers, it would profit from an entire ecosystem instead of one product cycle. That meant surviving thin margins, obsessive process control, and customers whose futures could vanish before their first shipment. It also meant learning to serve people who were once beneath the industry's attention. startups, specialists, and companies too small to impress Intel. A failed run could destroy cash, schedules, and reputations, because chip production burns money long before a product ever reaches a shelf. So TSMC sold reliability as hard as it sold capacity. The company would make what was ordered. It would protect the design. It would deliver on time. By the late 1990s, that discipline had turned a strange idea into a platform others could build empires on, and the biggest customers were starting to notice. By the 2000s, success created a new threat, because in semiconductors, every generation of progress demands another mountain of capital. A leading-edge fab is not just a factory, it is a controlled universe of chemistry, light, heat, and machinery that costs more as circuits get smaller. Smaller matters because more transistors, the microscopic switches inside a chip, can fit onto the same piece of silicon. More transistors usually mean more computing power, less energy use, or both. To stay ahead, TSMC had to keep spending, keep learning, and keep persuading customers that their secrets were safe. This was the discipline that made Chang different from many empire builders. He did not use manufacturing power to launch a glamorous house brand. He used it to become neutral ground. That neutrality mattered more each year because even rivals could share the same factory, as long as the factory never picked sides. The room smelled faintly of chemicals and chilled air, while outside investors saw only quarterly reports and a name few consumers recognized. Inside the industry, though, TSMC was becoming infrastructure, less like a gadget company, more like a private electric grid. If the light stayed on, everyone built faster. And when the smartphone age arrived, that hidden grid became indispensable. By the 2010s, the stakes had gone global, because a single missed production ramp could delay phones, servers, and products used by hundreds of millions. The smartphone boom turned chips from specialist components into the heartbeat of daily life. Every camera improvement, every battery gain, every burst of mobile computing leaned on more advanced silicon. TSMC sat behind that surge, building chips for companies that competed fiercely in public while sharing the same invisible manufacturing partner. Apple, Qualcomm, AMD, and later NVIDIA all needed something brutally hard. More performance, smaller power budgets, and predictable volume. TSMC's business model now revealed its strangest advantage. It did not need to guess which brand would win the market. It could supply several winners at once. That is a different kind of power. Consumer brands fight for attention every day. Infrastructure companies get paid when attention lands anywhere. Under the yellow glow of clean rooms, wafers moved through tools so precise that a delay at one step could ripple across the world. TSMC had built the quiet position every ambitious company wants: critical, profitable, and mostly invisible. Then the world got a reminder of what invisible infrastructure means when it breaks. In 2020, the line between business story and geopolitical story disappeared because chips suddenly became scarce just as the world needed more of them. Pandemic demand scrambled forecasts, car makers cut orders, device sales surged, and semiconductor lead times stretched painfully. A lead time is the wait between placing an order and getting delivery, and in chips, that wait can freeze entire industries. Factories could not be improvised because advanced semiconductor plants take years to build and tune. Now, a company most people had never heard of sat at the center of cars, consoles, data centers, and military anxiety. Washington wanted more production on American soil. Beijing viewed Taiwan through the lens of sovereignty and power. Customers wanted certainty in a business that cannot function without precision. TSMC responded by expanding abroad while keeping its deepest expertise rooted in Taiwan, a balance easier to describe than execute. Plants in places like Arizona and Japan were not just industrial projects. They were strategic signals. By then, TSMC was no longer merely a supplier. it was part of the map, a private company tangled with national security, diplomacy, and the risk calculus of superpowers. And the man who built it had already proven that the strangest decision of his career was also the one that remade the industry. Morris Chang retired from TSMC in 2018, but the operating logic he set in motion keeps shaping the digital world. He won by refusing a temptation that destroys many great companies, the urge to do everything yourself. TSMC chose one layer of the stack and drove deeper than almost anyone thought possible. In business, a stack is the chain of activities from design to manufacturing to the finished product in your hand. Most executives dream about owning the customer relationship. Chang built power by owning the hard middle. That middle is brutal. It demands massive spending, punishing precision, and years of faith before customers see results. But once trust compounds, the position becomes extraordinarily hard to replace. That is why TSMC matters far beyond Taiwan's stock market or the semiconductor trade press. It helps decide how quickly artificial intelligence advances, how resilient supply chains feel, and how much leverage nations think they hold. The company remains invisible to many consumers, which is almost funny given how much visible technology depends on it. In 2024, TSMC reported revenue of $2.89 trillion. A company built on making chips for everyone and designing chips for no one quietly became one of the most important businesses on Earth. TSMC's lesson is brutal and simple. The deepest power in technology often belongs to the company consumers never see. In 2024, TSMC reported revenue of $2.89 trillion, and the hidden factory Morris Chang imagined in Taiwan now helps set the pace of the modern world.